You're on live, by the way. I've accidentally clicked it. I've accidentally clicked it. So you're live. We'll start in 2 minutes. I just put it on your. Let's Jay?
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله فتاح المنان بالقول والفضل والإحسان الذي من علينا بالإيمان وفضل ديننا على سائر الأديان ومحى بحبيبه وخليله وعبده محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم عبادة الأوثان. وقال الله عز وجل في القرآن المجيد: أحسب الناس أن يتركوا أن يقولوا آمنا وهم لا يفتنون. وقال: وإذ قالت أمة منهم لم تعظون قوما الله مهلكهم أو معذبهم عذابا شديدا قالوا معذرة إلى ربكم ولعلهم يتقون. وقال النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم: المؤمن للمؤمن كالبنيان يشد بعضهم بعضا وشبك أصابعه. وقال: المسلمون كرجل واحد إن اشتكى عينه اشتكى كله وإن اشتكى رأسه اشتكى كله. Alhamdulillah, my respected brothers, elders, sisters. Just as we start, Alhamdulillah, we thank and we bless, and we thank Allah for the blessings that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bestowed upon us. And we begin always by praising Allah Azza wa Jal, as Allah Azza wa Jal is the one who is most worthy of being praised. And continuing, you can say, sort of from what we were speaking about last week, a very similar topic, if not exactly the same, is if we look in history and we look at all the atrocities that took place from hundreds and thousands of years ago, for example, and we'd always say to ourselves that would a time like this ever repeat? Would an incident like this ever happen again? Especially now that we're becoming more and more advanced, and so to say that we believe we are becoming more progressive in society, and that's what we believe. And all the atrocities that happened in the past, we just question ourselves, are these going to ever repeat and happen again? For example, if you look many years back, and we look at the incidents of the Crusades, for example, and the mass murder that took place therein, we think that could something like this happen again after such an incident. And we look many years later, and we look at the time of the Holocaust, for example, when millions and millions of people were openly killed, sent to concentration camps, tortured, day in, day out, for years upon years, and there was no one to stop this. And how many people actually thought that, you know what, we can do something about this? We're looking at these are incidents from the past, thinking, can something like this, especially with the media, everything that we have today, all sources of power, will such level of injustice ever take place ever again? And as the Imam was speaking last week regarding the incident of Bosnia, right, only 27 years ago, only 27 years ago on European soil, the genocide that took place, right on our doorsteps. And it just truly shows that these things can happen and these things will happen, unless we do something about it. Now today, what I'm going to be speaking about today is also of the similar nature, where In fact, today, many masjids around the entire world are talking about the same topic. And in fact, they chose this topic as a part of the International Khutbah Day, where our entire Muslim community, not just from UK, not just from Europe, but inshallah in the entire world, how we can come together to see how we can stop the injustice that's taking place within the four corners of the entire world. And you might be thinking, what am I talking about? This is none other than the incident of what's going on in China at the moment. And for those that aren't aware, we'll have a little bit of a backstory, inshallah, about what's happening there and why. And then, inshallah, we want to go into stages and think that as a Muslim today, living in Europe, living in the UK, what can we do about this? How can I make a change? Can we make a change? This is the question that every single one of us maybe has within our minds. Such a big thing that's happening in the world. But how can I make a change? How, as me, a person who's within my 20s, 30s, 40s, possibly 50s, 60s, how can I make a change within the world? And we truly can. Now, the incident that I'm talking about, I'm sure everyone is aware of. But if not, then it's something that we definitely should be aware of. If you look into the northwestern part of China, known as Xinjiang today, approximately 12 million people that reside there. It's in fact the country's largest region, which is occupied by China. And unfortunately, they have been going through an intensification of repression by the Chinese regime. And in fact, this is actually from the government side itself, where what they are trying to do is they're trying to cleanse of every single Muslim within the area. Just like how we spoke about Bosnia last week. So unfortunately, again, this is happening all over again. In fact, if you look at all the reports and all the incidents that have been reported by so many different news reports, they say that this area, it is the home to the largest mass detention camp of people since the Holocaust. The amount of people, inshallah, we'll go through the facts and figures soon, but this is just to get an idea of what the people around the world are going through and why we need to care, why we need to stand up. First and foremost, the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he mentioned that we as Muslims are, why should it affect me? Why should it bother me? Right? Living such far away from such a place. Why should it bother me? The Prophet ﷺ said, Al-Muslimuna ka-rajulin wahid. That the entire Muslim ummah is like one person. Right? We are all a million, a billion, 2 billion, however many, we are all like one human body. In ishtaka aynu, ishtaka kullu. If our eyes hurt, then our entire body will be in pain. وَإِنْ يَشْتَكَى رَأْسُ اشْتَكَى كُلُّ. If our head begins to hurt, then we are going to be hurt. Right? No one thinks that, oh, do you know what, I've got a headache, but do you know what, I'll be able to play football today because it's only my head. I'll be okay. Or my eye is in pain, but you know what, the rest of my body is fine, I'll be completely fine. That's not how we think. As soon as you get a headache, your full body doesn't want to move. As soon as you get a pain in your tooth, it's probably one of the most excruciating pains that you could have. Right? And as soon as you feel that wisdom tooth pain, for example, your entire body doesn't feel like doing it. And this is the example of the Prophet ﷺ. This is the example of the Prophet ﷺ, that we are like one body. That if any part of the ummah is hurt, that we are also going to be hurt. This is the sort of care that we're supposed to have for every single Muslim on the face of this earth. And also the Prophet ﷺ mentioned, Al-mu'minu lil-mu'mini kal-bunyan yashuddu ba'duhum ba'dan. That we are like a structure. A Muslim for another Muslim, a believer for another believer, we're like a structure. Right? We strengthen one another. And in fact, the Prophet ﷺ, he actually done this with his hands. To show us Muslims, we are like this, we are tied together. If any part of the ummah of the Prophet ﷺ is hurt, who's going to stand up for them? It's us. And this is a sort of care. If we do not have care for the ummah of the Prophet ﷺ, then truly we cannot be a part of the ummah of the Prophet ﷺ. Now, if we look at, in the province, in the area of Xinjiang, there are approximately 3 million Muslims that are in concentration camps. 3 million. That's almost the population of the Muslims in England. Can you imagine the entire Muslims in England were to be sent to concentration camps, separated from their families, not to see their mom and dad or their children ever again? Taken Islamic identity, taken completely from their lives. If they seem to have a beard, they're going to be tortured. If they're seeing anything Islamic, they're classed as extremists. Like, how sad is that? 10,000 plus masjid has been demolished. Like, not even closed, fully demolished. Never to exist ever again. And if you look at the stats from just 20, 30, 40 years ago, there's a huge, huge reduction of the Muslim population. And this didn't happen just over a few years. This has been a plan for many, many years to come. So now, what they're trying to do is they're trying to, criminalize every single part of a Muslim's life, from wearing the hijab, to having a beard, to pray, to, and they're forcing women. Imagine this. Like you are a woman and you are a married woman who has children, are being forced to marry atheist Chinese men. Why? Just because they don't want anything to do with a part of Islam within their country anymore. And children are being separated from their parents. Why? Because if they stick with their parents are going to teach them Islamic teachings. And they're completely separating them from their families. Just imagine for a split second, right? For those that are parents here, like imagine today someone wants to come inside your house. Just imagine someone wants to come inside your house. And take your youngest child. And you were never to be allowed to see them ever again. Can you imagine? The means are going to be changed. The religion no longer exists. And they're going to be putting mom and dad to people that they don't even know. And this is happening to millions and millions and millions of children. And not only in China, in many, many different parts of the world. Can we imagine? Now, I'm just going to list a couple of things. It's going to take too long to go into. I just want to list just a day in the life of a Uyghur Muslim. Right? The people that are living in the Xinjiang region, they're called Uyghurs. Right? They're from East Pakistan. And I just want to give an example of a life, of a day in the life of a Uyghur Muslim. A daily life, right? Number one, they're not allowed to pray. If they are seen praying, praying is forbidden. Right? So they are forced to pray in secrecy. If possible, they will quickly go to the toilet. And this is reports that have come back to us. If possible, what would happen is that whenever they want to pray, they would take an excuse of going to the toilet and quickly pray within the toilet. Can you imagine? Fasting isn't allowed. When the month of Ramadan comes, it's not allowed. If anyone is known to be fasting, they will be stripped of their, number one, they'll be taken away from their families and will put straight into the consecration. Why? Because their class is extreme. Right? You're not even allowed to say Assalamu alaikum to one another. Right? No Islamic weddings are allowed to take place. Right? They actually have informants from the government side, right, where they are to spy on people. And if they ever see that this Islamic wedding is to take place, right, they're actually funded by the government 7,500 of whatever their currency, maybe dollars or so, just for spying on the Muslims and telling them, now, do you know what, there's a wedding that took place here, take them away. Right? There's no Eid celebrations at all. Right? People are celebrating Eid, they're going to be tortured. Right? Their own language doesn't exist anymore. What they're doing is they're sending millions and millions of other Chinese atheist men into the society in order to dilute the amount of Muslims that there are. There are no more mosques. Right? The imams, the leaders have been left, meaning they have all been detained. And in one area, it says 70% of the masjids have all been demolished. Right? There is no such thing as halal food anymore. Right? Any sign, any logo that says halal, we will look out for when we go to the shops. We want to just a simple, Starburst, and we look towards the back of the packet, is there vegetarian, is there halal sign? Haribos are nice. Are they the halal ones or are they not the halal ones? That's what we look out for. These are all unlawful. You'll be punished. This is a punishable offense for it. Right? They are forced guests within society. They are forced to live amongst millions of atheist men who are just to infiltrate them. And no one knows who is a part of the police force or not. Everyone's dressed normally. And any sort of abnormality that they think, they're going to send you to Congo. They're going to separate you from their family. So everyone is scared. Can you imagine waking up with that fear? Every single morning. Every single person has to download an app on their phone where every single movement is monitored. If they realize that a person, the phone time is decreasing and they're trying to hide things, they're going to question you about it. Why are you not using your phone enough? You used to use your phone, what happened? Can you imagine the level of torture and oppression that's happening in this part of the world and we remain silent? Like, is this what the Ummah of the Prophet ﷺ is? Anyway, the list goes on and on and on. And I think the entire talk will probably go about regarding the oppression that the people are facing. But as I just want to pose a question to myself and to everyone that's in front of us is that could you live like this? Think about it. Like for a single day, would you be able to live like this? And if we can't, then why can they? Right? And I quote this, a woman saying this, that while they were beating me, I cried, Ya Allah. While they were beating me, I cried, Ya Allah. Right? This made them beating even more, and they were mocking me, saying, go and find your God. And they were beating me more and more and more. And these are the exact words of our sister by the name of Zumrat Dawood. And she was one of those lucky ones who were able to escape. And we'll go into the reason why she was able to escape, which will inshallah encourage us to help the Ummah of the Prophet ﷺ. And she was actually one of those very brave Uyghur Muslims who were able to give evidence against the whole genocide in Westminster not too long ago. Alhamdulillah. And even some of the police from that area who were oppressing the Muslims have come forward to say that, you know what we were doing was wrong. And they had to hide that. And this is all available. But unfortunately, we as Muslims, we have become weak. We are turning a blind eye to something which is meant to be directly hitting us right in the face. If we wouldn't want this for our brothers and sisters, why would we want it for them? Where has the Ummah of the Prophet come to? Right? But the important lesson that we can learn from the sister Zumrat's story is that one man did help her. And she was tortured for 60 days straight. And it was because of one man why she was released. And in fact, it was her husband. He was a Pakistani citizen. And what he done was, from wherever he was, he wrote to them, and he wrote to the Chinese embassy, saying that my wife is detained, and she is there, and I know that she is there. Right? And if you do not release her, I will go to the media. And just because of that, they released her. This is the sort of power that we have today, but we don't realize. Right? And sometimes we think that, what am I going to do? What can we do? But there's so much that we can do, and inshallah we'll go into that in a few moments. Right? But there's so much that we can do. But the first and foremost, what we need to understand that we cannot tell ourselves that, you know what, I'm just one person. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the Prophet and the Sahaba never taught us that. They said, do you know what, one person, what am I going to do? I don't know anything. I don't have any GCSEs or A-levels or any degrees to my name. What am I going to do? But this goes against the whole idea of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the system of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Firstly, because number one, this life is a test. Right? We are not in charge of the outcome. If that was the case, then some of the prophets of Allah would have been taken into task. No, but the jobs of the prophets was what? To call people towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and the outcomes and the results were in the hands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right? Nuh alayhi salam, the famous story of Nuh alayhi salam, right? Giving da'wah, calling people towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for 950 years. Right? And only a handful of people accepted Islam. Not once did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala say that, why didn't 1 million people come into the fold? Why didn't 100, 200, 500, 3,000 people come into the fold? This wasn't the job of Nuh alayhi salam. All his job was that everything that he has within his capability, I will do, and Allah will deal with the rest. Right? Even me as a Muslim today, or us as Muslims today, we will have a responsibility. Everything within our means that we do. Then alhamdulillah, we understand that we are absolved from the responsibility that Allah said has given us. Right? There's actually an incident of the people of Musa alayhi salam, of the Banu Israel. Right? There was a huge group of people who used to do a lot of evil. There used to be a huge group of people that used to do a lot of evil. Right? But there was also a group of people that used to do a lot of good. And from amongst the people that used to do good, there were two groups. Right? One of the groups, what they used to do, they used to keep calling the people of evil that, you know what, stop what you're doing, stop what you're doing. And the second group of good people used to say that, and then it's mentioned in the Quran, وَإِذْ قَالَتْ أُمَّةٌ مِّنْهُمْ لِمَ تَعِدُونَ قَوْمًا اللَّهُ مُهْلِكُهُمْ أَوْ مُعَذِّبُهُمْ عَذَابًا شَدِيدًا. And the second group of good people used to say that why are you going to keep advising and calling a group of people who Allah's going to punish anyway? Allah's going to do away with them anyway. And what did that second group say? And this is something, whenever we're fighting for the truth and whenever we're struggling for the truth, that every single one of us needs to embed and write in gold within our hearts. Right? What did they say? Number one, قَالُوا مَعْذِرَةً إِلَىٰ رَبِّهِمْ. Number one, I'll be absolved from my responsibility in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. On the day of judgment, I'll say that, you know what? I gave every single part of my ability, inshallah, to protect your religion, to protect your deen, and inshallah that will be enough. And the secondly, وَلَعَلَّهُمْ يَتَّقُونَ, and then hopefully that they will abstain. If they see that there are enough people who are fighting for this cause, inshallah a time will come when they'll say that, you know what, there's nothing that we can do and we need to stop this. Right? But remember, number one, this doesn't happen overnight. Right? This doesn't happen overnight. Even if you look at Salahuddin Ayyubi rahimahullah, he didn't just wake up one day and think that, you know what, let me just book a flight. I don't even have flights back then, but let me just book a flight to Palestine and liberate Palestine because I felt like it. Right? This was years upon years upon years of Islamic teachings and understanding and faith and iman and yaqeen and beliefs and the right ideology and making dua and dhikr and coming together as a society. And over years this happened. So even if we don't see something happen immediately, do not lose heart. But understand that there's a responsibility upon every single one of us. And this also falls under the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ who mentioned, مَنْ رَأَى مِنْكُمْ مُنْكَرًا فَلْيُغَيِّرُ بِيَدِهِ. This is a responsibility for every single one of us to remember, right? For eternity. Now the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ said, whosoever sees an evil taking place, he must change it with his hand. He must change that with his hand if he's able to do so. فَإِنْ لَمْ يَسْتَطِعْ. If he is unable, فَبِلِسَانِهِ, then at least he should speak out against it. فَإِنْ لَمْ يَسْتَطِعْ فَبِقَلْبِهِ. And if he is unable to say something against it, why? Because of, he himself might be putting himself in danger, etc., etc., etc. فَبِقَلْبِهِ وَذَلِكَ أَضَعْفُ الْإِيمَانِ. Then at least he should feel a great sorrow and remorse within his heart that he wants to make a change, that he wants to make a change. And the minimum that will come out from that is what? That you are going to be sincerely making dua, making dua, making dua, making dua. How can we stand in front of these people on the day of judgment? Right? In front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and say that not even once did I make dua for these people. Not even once did I spend 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 5 minutes on a daily basis making dua for those people who are requiring our du'as. How can we stand on the day of judgment and say that when a good cause came and we could have given money towards this, and not a single one of us was able to do a single thing or a single deed for the sake of these people, how will we show face on the day of judgment? This is the ummah of the Prophet ﷺ that we're talking about. Right? If you look into the past, if you look at, for example, at the time of the Treaty of Hudaybiyah, right? At the time of the Treaty of Hudaybiyah, when the Prophet ﷺ sent Uthman radiallahu anhu, right? He sent Uthman radiallahu anhu to negotiate with the Quraysh, with the non-Muslims. And what happened was that Uthman was delayed. Uthman radiallahu anhu was delayed in his return. And what did the Sahaba think? Straight away, after quite a while, they thought that, you know what? It seems as though, due to animosity, they have murdered Uthman radiallahu anhu. Straight away, they pledged allegiance to the Prophet saying that we are going to avenge the death of Uthman radiallahu anhu, and we are going to march towards Mecca. Straight away. There's no ifs, no buts. This is how we are going to protect the ummah, even if there's just one person. Can you imagine millions and millions and millions of Muslims being tortured again and again and again on a regular, on a daily basis, and we have no remorse within our hearts? And so number one, we try to change it with our tongues. Number two, if we can't, then at least with our tongues. And number three, if not that, then at least we can do is have that remorse within our heart. There is no fourth option. There is no fourth option thinking like, you know what, I'm only one person, I can't do anything. No, this is the responsibility that Allah has given us. Right? Now, if you look at the example of Zumra, the sister Zumra who was freed because of her one husband, imagine how much that we can do. Right? Just before we start to finish off, there was so much more to mention, but time doesn't allow us. But one of the main things to remember is that some of the few things that we can do and act upon is all well speaking about this and and go through the pain of our Muslim brothers and sisters, but what can we actively do? The reason why I was told to speak about this today, and many masjids around the entire world have been chosen to speak about this topic today, is because on this Sunday, on the 31st of July, there are going to be, on the 31st of July, there will be Muslims standing up and saying the word of truth in front of the Chinese embassy in different parts of the entire world. Number one, there will be one in London, there will be one in Manchester, there will be one in Edinburgh, there will be one in Sydney, Toronto, Washington, Istanbul, South Africa, and many, many more countries around the world on the 31st of July. Right? So obviously the closest place to us is obviously London. For those brothers and sisters that can attend, it'll be really, really, really beneficial for the entire Muslim Ummah, inshallah. And there'll be some prominent speakers that will be there as well, starting from 12:30 p.m. And I think every single one of us should try to attend and try to help the cause to the best of our ability. And this is showing moral support. And we've actually heard, well, not myself, but the reports that have come to us, where the people of that region, when they hear this and when they see millions of people standing up for them, wallah, it gives them peace within their hearts. And I've had many people that go to certain countries, whether it's Palestine or Syria, to see the Muslims and how they are. One of the first things that they say, please keep coming back, please keep coming back. See us, please speak to us. Because we don't get these opportunities every single day. When we see you, we have a glimpse, we get a tiny bit of hope within our hearts that inshallah Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will help us. So we make dua, we make sincere dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protects every single one of those people that are being oppressed throughout the four corners of the entire world. That's the minimum that we can do. And choose those times which are most accepted. Du'as are most accepted after your fard salah, in the middle of the night if possible, between Asr and Maghrib, between Adhan and Iqamah. These are the times where dua is readily accepted. Make a lot of dua, even if it's for a few minutes every single day. Number one. Right? Number two, show physical support to them. Turn up at these events to show them that we are large in number and we are not going to go silent. And the more pressure that we put on them, inshallah, they will, and more governments will be involved, and more of a chance that we have to fight this, inshallah. And we'll look back at, inshallah, a time will come when we'll look back at this, maybe 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, and we'll think that, you know what, alhamdulillah, I was a part of this. Alhamdulillah, I was a part of this. Right? Even the Prophet ﷺ needed more support. Imagine. Right? When the people used to call him a madman, when the people used to call him crazy, even Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, مَا أَنْتَ بِنِعْمَةِ رَبِّكَ بِمَجْنُونَ. That you are, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, that you are by the favor of your Lord, you are not a madman. And indeed, for you is a reward uninterrupted. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, don't worry about what the people are saying. Even Allah is consoling the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, even the Prophet needed moral support. Right? So this is just one aspect. Number one, make a lot of dua and try to show our physical and moral support to the people out there in the four corners of the entire world, inshallah. Another thing, I think one of the most important things is that we educate ourselves, that we understand what is happening around the world, because we can only care as much as we educate ourselves about the people and about those oppressions that are taking place around the world. And there are so many resources which we can talk about another time. I'll just end on this last one, inshallah, is that looking for those charities which are able to help these causes. Obviously, reputable registered charities are able to help these causes. We try to help in all ways and means possible. So I make dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that gives us all the ability to number one, at least make dua for those brothers and sisters who are being oppressed in the four corners of the entire world. Number two, understand how I make dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He gives us the understanding for us to be able to see how lucky we are to have this faith and to be able to openly, practice our faith, pray our salah, fast, and worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala without any sort of obstruction. So we should take this opportunity. And so I make dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protects each and every single one of us, protects the iman of the generation, of our next generation, and in the four corners of the entire world. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us good.